Hi, so my name is Bart Skarupa, and I run a nonprofit called Groundwork Opportunities. I'm going to take this. I usually move when I speak. And GO for short. And our motto is the power of their ideas and our support. And what we do is really simple. We look for sustainable ideas in the developing world, and we provide them the mechanisms to help them grow. And I actually don't have almost any nonprofit experience when I started this 3 years ago. Most of my background was actually in corporate and management strategy consulting. And I did really well for myself in this field. I did really well for the 1%, but it wasn't fulfilling me spiritually, and I didn't know quite what I was looking for, and I traveled a lot in the consulting world, and I'm actually an immigrant here as well. My parents moved here from Poland, and they gave me all these opportunities with my life, and here I was doing really well for large multinational corporations, doing really well for myself, but not helping other people. And I took this trip about 4 years ago where I was fortunate enough to volunteer in Madagascar. And I was diving every day. It was an amazing experience, and then this happened. So this, about 4 years ago, I developed a corneal ulcer in my left eye. We were in this area that was away from any access to clean water. It was a place where a hurricane hit right when this happened. So in a place where I couldn't be medically evacuated, I was taken into a small shelter that was basically this Catholic mission where a local doctor took a knife and actually scraped the ulcer out of my eye. He had no anesthetics, unless you count the popsicle sticks they gave me to actually bite down from the pain, which I snapped through most of them. And it changed my life. It was one of the worst things that's ever happened to me that changed my life for the better. I spent the next few weeks there recovering. Miraculously, my vision started coming back. I started to see shadows, and then I could start making out figures, and then I could start reading again. And this community took care of me. And this doctor, as I came to learn, he was a local Malagasy. And even when he performed the surgery, he actually had to hold my eye open. He's like, dude, you're putting a knife in my eye. There's no way I'm going to be able to like hold it open for you. And the reason he asked that was he actually had one arm that was he couldn't quite move it right. And he spoke with a little bit of a stutter, and it was actually a result of a stroke. And he had spent a lot of time working abroad, and when he had this stroke, he was actually working in London and realized he had the capacity to help his people and return to Madagascar. From this experience, it really taught me that there was these people that were going back or actually naturally like investing local ideas that would help their communities. And I began to meet more and more of them, and that's what started this nonprofit that we run here called GO, or Groundwork Opportunities. We look for people like that doctor, and we found so many to date. The problem was when I came back from all this travel, and I didn't have any money. I had $2,000 between 3 people, 1 idea, and 1 story. And that was it. That was 3 years ago. At this point, we've raised about $1.2 million to $1.5 million by end of year. We have 10 projects in 8 different countries that will probably impact about 3,000 to 4,000 people every single day. And we started this with very few resources, which is a huge asset that most of you probably already have. Hyperfrugality is a massive thing. And all we had was these 3 things. We had a story. We got people engaged with it by telling it, by using fabulous content on our site, on our Facebook page, and we started telling people with influence, people that had great blogs, that already had strong brands. That was one of the great things that was shown in the past panel, which crowdsourcing is really all about, and I'll introduce the panel that are the experts in this area, is being authentic and having that story is the first key step. That's what distinguishes you from the 5.3 million other nonprofits that are currently existing. It's that authentic story that'll get people working for you with their blood, their sweat, and their tears. It's the why. I'm going to pass it over to the panel who's going to talk about this. One just quick recommendation I would personally have is watch Start With Why by Simon Sinek. It's a great TED Talk that really goes into this really well about why these 3 key things that the panel will talk about matters. It's starting with the why, finding your story. The what and the how, they're important, but the why is the most key thing behind it. And that's what led to our success. And I'd be happy to explain that more later. I'll be around all day, but I'd like to introduce the panel who will go over their ways of how to engage your audience, how to crowdsource. Monica, Leslie, and Susan from Causes, Razoo, and Team in Training. They each have one slide each that they'll show. And then we'll start with Monica from Team in Training.
I'm still a little grossed out by your eye situation, but I'm glad you're all healed now.
It was quite the visual.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. I'm Monica Healy. I work for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society's Team in Training program, the local Greater San Francisco Bay Area chapter. It's a long, we call ourselves TNT for short. And as much as I love a captive audience that likes to talk about fundraising, and I want to recruit you all to be part of our team, I have brochures, so you can see them later. But I'm going to talk to you about how crowdsourcing and really opening your networks has, it's been the foundation for the success of our program. How many people just have heard of Team in Training? Just, yeah, so a lot of you. Again, we started actually in this picture on the left. I thought it was kind of funny. The guy that's in the background is Cleland, and that's a picture from him running the 1988 New York City Marathon. And you can't really see it, but he's wearing tights that were designed by his daughter, who was at the time, and still is, a survivor of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he had his own story. You know, he had this experience in his life that left him a changed man, and he wanted to do something about it. He wasn't a doctor, he worked in finance. And then he also wanted to do something, you know, to spread the word and get more people invested in what he believes in. So at that time, in 1988, he got 30 of his friends to get together to fundraise for what was then the Leukemia Society of America. And together they raised over $300,000, which I think any of you would be happy to get $300,000 today in terms of fundraising. And they did it really the old-fashioned way. I mean, I think Mark Zuckerberg was probably in diapers still. There was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, there was no email. They wrote letters, they licked stamps, they called people, they met people for lunch. And it's really about, they opened their networks and got people invested. And after this, 23 years ago, the model was created that you get people connected, find out why they want to do this, why they're connected to the cause, and get them to tell everyone. It's really been our model, and to date, we've over 500,000 people have completed an endurance event with Team in Training, and together those people have raised $1.2 billion. And this has really been because one person told his 30 friends, and those 30 friends told their 30 friends. And there are a lot more tools that we use today to get those networks open. And the person on your right, I'm just going to talk about her example, what she did last year. Her name is Jasmine. And she's in this is her father, who passed away from leukemia. And she wanted to fundraise and share his story. So she personally spoke about it, but she also, on Facebook, she trained for 10 months to complete an Ironman. And every day for 10 months on Facebook, she posted a countdown. So every day you saw her message, what she was doing. She was very funny about it. But the other thing that she did that was really successful was anybody who donated, she thanked them over Facebook, tagged them, and made sure that not only her networks knew, but now their networks knew as well. So not only did you know that your person, your friend, was generous, you knew what they were donating to as well, because she always included her fundraising page. So what I want to say, how it's worked for us, is really keeping it back to the basics, knowing your story, making it personal, making sure you don't, as many tools as you use to be successful in your fundraising, and believe me, we use blogs, Facebook, Twitter, email, online tools, is to really make sure that you don't underestimate the power of a phone call, a written thank you note, and really getting maybe some key people invested, and then getting them to get their people invested as well too, because this good pyramid scheme can really generate millions and now billions of dollars as well for your cause.
Thanks so much for having me today. I'm so excited to be here. And so my name is Susan Gordon. I'm the Director of Nonprofit Services for Causes. Someone on the last panel mentioned that there are all these free tools out there that can help you use social media to fundraise. So causes.com is one of them. And so I'm here to talk about what works in terms of crowdsourcing. And so I want to do that from two angles. One is from the fundraiser side, and the other is from the nonprofit side. So in terms of the fundraiser side, so BART's three things of telling a story, creating fabulous content, and then telling the influencers or promoting is one that we talk about all the time. And I was glad to talk to him yesterday and hear that for the first time, because I'm glad we're being consistent in our messaging, even though we've never met each other before. So I just want to tell a couple stories, because I think that's the best way to sort of illustrate this point. So at the top of the screen, there's or actually over on the right-hand side here is this guy named Eric Ding. And so the story here is that Eric was sitting in his dorm room and decided he wanted to make a difference about cancer. And he was in med school at Harvard. And so he thought it would be a great idea to use a new tool. Causes had just came out, so he created a cause called Campaign for Cancer Prevention. And this is very ambitious of him. He was sitting alone in his dorm room and called this thing the Campaign for Cancer Prevention. And he found his story. And it was really interesting is he came up with his own story. This was not fed to him by the nonprofit, but he said, I'm getting all this great research because I'm here at Harvard, but none of my friends and family back home are hearing this really innovative, cool research. And so I want to, A, provide them that. To provide anybody who wants to join a forum to learn about the most cutting-edge research coming out of top universities. And two, as he said, it's really making him angry. His passion was actually out of anger. He said, I'm pissed that people when they donate to cancer, keep donating to big organizations like the American Cancer Society and Susan G. Komen. He said, I've got this great hospital, and they're small, but they've got a great brand name, but not a lot of people know about them. And I want people, when they think about cancer, to know that they can donate right to researchers. And so for those of you who are fundraising for smaller nonprofits, sometimes that can be your story, is that he was saying, we're putting our money to the best use, making the most cutting edge research, and so I want people donating to the Nurses' Health Study at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. So he made this story, and then he went out, and so now he actually has more than 6 million people who have joined his cause. And a lot of nonprofits see that, and they say, like, how did he do that? I want to get 6 million people, and they jump to the end game. And it's sort of hard to see when you just look at an online page with a lot of people and a lot of members is the fact that in the beginning he was a person of one, and he started this by offline, going to his friends, going to the break rooms at hospitals and telling this story about how he was going to start this community and he really believed in this mission. And that real offline grassroots organizing directed to the online tools that helped him multiply it was absolutely the way that he got to 6 million people. And so now he's using this to crowdfund real direct-to-researcher projects. And so if you go to causes.com/cancer, you can see the projects tab on his cause has 8 different real research projects going on right now that anybody who comes there can choose which one am I most passionate about, what do I want to donate to, and it's a really neat way to sort of crowdsource something that has never been crowdsourced before, which is like very academic, very research, very intellectual research studies. He sends bulletins to 6 million people about epigenetic causes of cancer. But the point is that he's getting this really cutting edge research out to anybody who wants to join this cause. So I think it's a great example of the finding a story, producing the content actually came from the nonprofit side, but then telling everybody he knew and using online tools to multiply that message. Elliot Greenberger is the other example up here. He used our Wishes feature, which is just another online tool. It's at wishes.causes.com. But what he did is the same thing. He took his story, which was, I'm just a guy, and I really care about these issues, and he was going to fundraise from his friends for his birthday. And the best thing that Elliot did to do this was make it really personal. So we've done the biggest, we have thousands of people creating these wishes every year to fundraise for their birthday or for walks or for runs or things like that. And I can always tell right when I see the wish itself whether or not it's going to raise a lot of money or not by how personal the message is. And so often I see people sort of using the default language, which is like, I really care about this cause, and like, you should donate to it too, period. And it's just what the sort of default that we popped up on the screen, and when they click, okay, yeah, that's fine, go. when they take a minute to really put their story into it, they can even record a video that's like a heartfelt plea. You know, we see a lot of people, whether it's Team in Training. I actually fundraised for Team in Training, and the time that I would send out emails just saying, "Hey friends, please donate," no one would donate. And the time that I would put that little extra effort into it to say, you know, it's Monday. Mondays always remind me of this story. This story is why I'm fundraising for this. You know, just that little extra effort to put personal content. And what that said to my friends and family that I was fundraising through or trying to get to donate was that Susan's not just throwing this up because it's yet another cause she's excited about this month. This is really what she's caring about, and this is why. And so those are just a couple stories of how that's working. And I wanted to talk about the nonprofit side as well. So these were people who sort of by themselves came up with that message and followed Bart's 3 things, and it really worked. But there are also nonprofits that are doing an incredible job at packaging their story in a way that can be retold by others. So what's really interesting is on Causes we have about 20,000 nonprofit partners, and some of them are getting tons of people to fundraise for them, and some of them are not. And what's interesting is it's not the ones that you would think. Our top fundraising nonprofits on Causes are nonprofits like the Homeward Trails Animal Rescue, the Prem Rawat Foundation, nonprofits that most of us, I had never heard of before I started working at Causes, and they are giant fundraisers. And so I'm thinking, what are they doing right? How are they getting people to tell their story? And what's really interesting is that they're telling their own personal story of why they founded the nonprofit, or the story of what happened today at work that made them really excited to come to work, and all these little stories that then they're hoping that people will repackage. Another organization that I fundraised for was Charity Water, and so we hear a lot they're really neat because they have great design and they seem to be very successful. And when I fundraised for them, what was really interesting was that I don't really have a personal connection to clean water crises around the world. I've always had clean water. So why, you know, when I'm fundraising and telling my friends why they should donate, I don't have a very personal story of it really affected me and my family. So what I basically did was to get my friends to donate, I just took Scott's story, who is the founder of Charity Water, and I retold his story. So if I was fundraising for Bart, I would just retell the story of the cornea and the scraper all the time. And that's what I found myself doing, which was like at bars or at parties. What I would do is say, there's this guy, his name's Scott, you know, like he was a party promoter, then he founded this nonprofit, blah, blah, blah. And I found myself retelling his story, and then that was what got my friends to donate. And so what a lot of these effective nonprofits on Causes or on whatever tool they're using is they're finding whatever personal story that they're finding a lot of people can connect with, and they're putting it up on their website. They're recording videos of themselves telling that story. They've got it up on YouTube. I was suddenly forwarding to my friends like YouTube clips from Scott talking in front of a camera and like a webcam in his office. And so whatever you can do to sort of, whether it's why you started working for the organization, whether it's why you started fundraising, put it on a YouTube clip, in a 1-minute YouTube clip, or put your text story just somewhere really visible on the website. And you'll find that people, when they don't have their own story about your issue, are just grabbing that and then putting it in their own emails to their friends. And so whatever is working, as long as those personal stories are being spread, that's what's going to get people to fundraise for the cause. So.
Actually, just really quickly before Leslie speaks, Scott, who I know now quite well and has become a mentor of mine, his story is so raw because he was this party promoter that started Charity Water. And when I first came into the nonprofit world, the smartest thing you can do is like, well, who's doing the best at fundraising? They've raised $52 million in 5 years with no grants. That's amazing. That's pure crowdsourcing. And Scott's story is so raw. He talks about his drug use. He talks about his party promotions. He talks about being on the beaches of Uruguay with models and realizing how empty his life was. And I first heard that story when he did a big money pitch when he first came to San Francisco to all these really wealthy hobnobs here. And I thought, wow, that's crazy. There's no way that's going to work. But it does because his story is so authentic. So I just wanted to reverberate on that moment. And then Leslie from Razoo.
Great, nice to be here. My name is Leslie Mansford. I'm the CEO of Razoo, and Razoo is a social fundraising platform. I'm sure many of you know of Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding platform for creative projects, where I think of Razoo as a crowdfunding platform for nonprofits and for individuals who are passionate about causes and nonprofits. So I'm just going to tell my quick version of finding your story, developing fabulous content, and then telling a story. So starting with finding your story, so I've spent most of my life in the for-profit world, and what I always think about now is I like to think about donors, who to me are sort of the heroes behind any fundraising campaign, as your investors, and to spend a little bit of time up front there thinking about that as though whether you're a nonprofit or whether you're an individual, of running a business and asking people to invest in that. So, you know, what is that 30-second elevator pitch? You know, who are you? How are you connected to the cause? What's the problem that you're trying to solve out there? Whether it's homelessness or literacy, and if this person invests, what are they going to get from that, and what kind of impact are they going to make with their investment? So I really think spending the time to think up front about that message and who you are and what that story is will really pay off and make the ask a lot easier for you. So then turning to developing fabulous content. Yeah, that'd be great. So what's really wonderful and powerful, I think, about online fundraising and social fundraising is that the fundraising ask becomes no longer just about text. It becomes about video. It becomes about pictures. It becomes about the use of pictures, multiple pictures that can tell a story, and a really powerful video. And we obviously heard a lot from this morning about the power of photos. So those are great tools that you can use. The other thing I would say is be creative. And I picked a fundraiser on Razoo because I think it's a very interesting way to be creative. So basically, this is a gentleman called Jeff Livingstone. He's actually sort of well known in the social media world for nonprofits. And he's very passionate about an organization called InvisiblePeople.tv, which is also a very interesting organization to look at. Basically, the gentleman who founded Invisible TV was himself at once homeless, and recognized the fact that most homeless people, we don't really have a face of homeless people. They're invisible to us. So he actually goes out there with a video camera and tells a story of homeless people. So it's extremely powerful. So basically, Jeff chose to put together a creative fundraiser that actually used humor. And, you know, obviously homelessness is not really a funny topic, but he was able to then easily create a fundraiser and get friends, supporters, and actually a lot of the work he did went viral to get people to donate to this cause. So basically, Jeff's kind of cry to his friends and supporters was to give people a chance to get even with him and to help fight homelessness. So he basically set up these giving milestones, and I think that's an important thing to think about too, is how can you kind of set up milestones that are really achievable for you and your donors to reach, so that there's along the way a sense of progress and a sense of impact and satisfaction. So the first milestone for Jeff was basically if he received a certain number of donations at $18, he would get a pie in the face. He achieved that, and he then created a video which he then sent out again to his friends and supporters. The next one was as I said, he's a big social media guy. He held a little sort of conference on Google Hangouts where he dressed up in drag. And he said he would do that if 43 people donated $47. And again, these are very small amounts, and it makes it almost like a no-brainer for people to want to participate, and particularly to see Jeff punished in this case. And the final thing is that he said he would walk around, he's based in DC, he would walk around in front of Congress with a sandwich board saying, "I wrote 2 social media books, please hire me," which he did, and again, he then was able to put that video together and to send that out. And the other thing that's powerful here, again, is sort of this connection that online media, online fundraising allows between the donor and the nonprofit. Is Mark, the founder of Invisible People, obviously heard about what Jeff was doing, and then he also put together a really powerful video thanking Jeff and all of his supporters. So it's a really nice story of closing the loop. Just another quick example there. We have another, actually a nonprofit this time, the Bedlam Theater Company in Minnesota. And they also created a creative fundraiser where they actually locked their executive director in a cage. And they basically had certainly giving milestones whereby if you donated so much, he'd get a glass of water. If you donated so much, he'd actually finally be let out of the cage. Anyway, creative, powerful, interesting, and I wanted to share those with you. So finally, just the tell people section. I think one of the, it's an obvious thing, but most people say that the reason they didn't give is they actually weren't directly asked. So being bold enough to make that direct ask. The other thing I always say is when you're doing an online fundraiser, make sure you're the first one that donated to it. People don't like to be first to the party. They don't like coming into the empty room, so do that. Getting back to the sort of business analogy, who are your friends and family that could be almost like your angel investors that can help you get momentum behind your campaign? Get those guys on board first. And then start to use the online tools. We talk a lot about social fundraising and tapping into social networks. Email is still probably the most powerful online tool out there, so use email, and again, you can capture videos and photos in email. And then tap into social networks and tap into other people's social networks, and not just tell your story, but share your story and get other people to share it with you. Bart talked a little bit about influencers. It's easy to sort of just stay with the people that you know and get them to share out the story, but you know, I think, especially in the nonprofit world, you can think creatively about people that you would like to be supporting your campaign. Twitter is a very powerful tool these days where you can actually start following and start to potentially engage with people that you'd never be able to get on the phone. So who might those interesting influencers be? And use Twitter as a useful tool to start following them. Also, you can, you know, with sites like Razoo, you can put widgets, donation widgets, and status widgets so people can see how you're doing on your own website and your own blog. So utilize all of those tools. And then finally, I would just say, as Jeff did a great job, keep the connection going, you know, with your donors. Think of them, again, as investors. And if you want a future investment, you've got to continue to build that relationship.
Thank you. How much time we were just about time? 5 minutes? Or just? Okay. So I'll just give a closing note on kind of some of the subjects that Leslie, Monica, and Susan touched upon. In Rwanda, there's this really simple parable. The parable just says, you give what you have. And it sounds remarkably stupid and simple, but if you really think about it, sometimes in the power of crowdsourcing, it's not always funding that will help trigger a really successful campaign like the ones that you saw here. One example, we now have individuals fundraising for us, which is an amazing, and we're so blessed to have that. We had a fundraiser named Heather who was running her first half marathon to build these beehives in Uganda. And she pledged to raise $2,000, and about a week before her marathon, she was at $1,800. And she had tapped it out, she had sent the emails, and posted on her Facebook, and it just wasn't, you know, but she had reached kind of donor fatigue because everyone that she knew had already donated right away. So she stopped asking for donations, and she asked people to donate a song. On Grooveshark, you can create a playlist and get people involved. And it was like a really scrappy idea that like took off. I mean, people realized, okay, well, how about this song? And then she started saying that, oh, I'll listen to these tracks as I'm running the half marathon. So she engaged her audience in a completely different way, and people realized that it's not just money that they can give, they can support her friend, their family member in a different way. And then she actually ended up raising about 30% over her goal. She raised about $2,700 because people got more engaged in the campaign by not just giving money, they gave something else. And that's really the power of crowdsourcing, is that people can give in so many different ways than just funding, but it always actually leads up to having more successful campaigns. So thank you to Susan, Monica, and Leslie for giving their tips and tricks. We'll be around later, and thank you very much.